Hey, what's up guys? My name's Jared. Welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Nissan, a little bit about the Honda, and a little bit about the Land Cruiser. Okay, so the Nissan engine. In my last update video, you would have seen that I was preparing to start assembling this thing and I broke one of the piston rings. And so basically, all of the piston rings were stuck in the pistons and I had to get them loose and try to take them out and clean them and then clean out the grooves. And I was able to do that successfully on 3 of the pistons, but on the last one, the last ring on the last one, I couldn't get it to come out and it broke. And it's really turned out to be for the best. So I was able to get new rings. I actually got a whole set of pistons and rings, and they're very cheap. It was like 50 bucks for the pistons and the rings. You can see I didn't use the new pistons, and the reason for that is that these wrist pins have to be pressed in. You have to heat the piston rod, and then you have to press these in, and so it has to be done at a machine shop. And these pistons are just like, they're the same that was already in there. So basically I ended up just using the rings. So what I did, I installed the new rings on the old pistons, which the old pistons are still very lightly used. I mean, the engine was rebuilt recently. But so those rings were the same. They're the same thickness, everything was the same. So I checked the end gap on the rings, and then I put the rings on the piston, and I checked the side clearance between the ring and the piston to make sure that everything was within spec and everything was good. So basically I could have just bought the rings, which would have been even cheaper, but this was already a very cheap fix. So anyway, I got the rings back in, got the pistons in. I also checked a bunch of other stuff. I checked the oil clearance for the rod to crank bearing. I also checked the oil clearance for the main bearings and the end play on the crank, and everything looks good. So I'm feeling pretty confident about the engine as it is now. I also have gone through the head. I mentioned this in my last video, but I lapped all the valves on the head. And again, this was all rebuilt in the past too. It already has new seals on the valve stems. It was already in pretty good shape. It was just a little bit corroded from sitting for so long. So I'm feeling good about the head as well. So the next step is going to be to install the head, the timing chain, make sure that's all set up correctly, the front cover, and then I can start putting on everything else. The oil pan, I have a new alternator, new water pump, all that stuff is new and ready to go. So I can get all that stuff back on it. Hopefully, I'm expecting the engine assembly series videos just to be hopefully in 2 videos. So I've got one getting it to this point that's going to be out or would have come out before this video. And then hopefully in one more assembly video, this thing's going to be all ready to go and I can put it back into the truck. And then hopefully have it running very, very quickly after that. So that's the Nissan. I'm making good progress. Also, of course, I replaced the rear main seal. All the gaskets, every seal and gasket's going to be replaced on it when it's back together. So hopefully that thing's going to be running very soon. So for the Honda, in my last video that I posted on the Honda, you would have seen that I rebuilt the exhaust, or the muffler. So I took the exhaust off, cut the muffler open, basically rebuilt it from the inside out, put it all back together. Had to replace some of the exhaust pipes on the rear. The exhaust on this thing is really small. It's only 1.25 inch outside diameter exhaust tubing, which was very difficult to find. I couldn't find it anywhere online. I looked for a few weeks. Finally, I did come across what I needed at a lawnmower supply store, but they were only in short sections because obviously they're for lawnmowers, they're not for cars, so they're not selling like 10-foot strips of it or anything. But I was able to get a couple of those, and I rebuilt the rear section of the exhaust pipe that I needed. And then of course I redid the whole muffler and put it back together. So sounds great. The car's still running really good. I'm still driving it a lot. I just crossed over 700 miles yesterday. when I was out driving it around. So this one's doing really well. I think I mentioned this in the past, but it had a little bit of a wobble around 55 miles an hour. Between 55 and 65, the car would shake just a little bit, and then it would kind of level out. After checking a lot of stuff, I've pretty much determined it was the wheels. I had bought 4 replacement wheels for the car because one of them was clearly really bent. One of the 4 that came on it was very bent, and then I wanted an extra one for the spare. And so I had used 2 of the new wheels and then 3 of the existing wheels to give me my 5. I think all 3 of those existing wheels I used were slightly bent. After jacking up the car and spinning the wheels, I could see just a tiny little wobble on the inside of a couple of those rims, the 2 that were original to the car. So I think somehow every single rim on this car had a slight bend to it. So I don't know what happened in its past to cause that. But so I went ahead and sandblasted the other 2 wheels, painted those, and swapped the tires over. And now it's much better. There's still a very slight wobble, and there seems to be an issue with these tires. The rims are all straight now, but it seems like on the inside, it seems like the tire hasn't popped all the way out to the bead for some reason. But that same tire, there's multiple tires that have done that, and they've been mounted twice now, and they put a lot of pressure on them when they mount them. So maybe it's going to turn out that these tires just aren't going to work out, and I'm going to have to get a new set of tires to finally get rid of that. But it's extremely minor now, that wobble. It's almost completely gone, but I can still feel it a little bit. Also, the steering seemed just a little off, especially at higher speeds. And so I checked the alignment, and the alignment was towed out kind of quite a bit, like probably a little less than ½ inch towed out, which is quite a bit since you typically want just a little bit of toe in, I believe, on the front. So anyway, I made some adjustments to the alignment, and it's way better now. I mean, at 70, you can take your hand off of the steering wheel and it feels nice and straight and solid, and it corrects back to center as it should. So that was a big improvement. So basically, I've been going through and just finding and taking care of little issues like that. And that's kind of what I've been waiting to finish before I do a drive video. There was also a really obnoxious rattle, which I thought was coming from the muffler. I actually thought it was coming from lots of places. I thought maybe it was the holes in the floor, so I patched those in the past, and I put sound deadening material on there, and that didn't fix it. And then of course I thought it was the muffler, and did that whole thing, and that didn't fix it, but the muffler did need to be rebuilt. Ultimately, what it came down to, I'll show you. Let's get this hood open. So I've been searching everywhere. You know, I thought maybe it was one of these brake lines up against the body, because it would only vibrate at a certain RPM. Around 5,000 RPM, it was this really obnoxious kind of high pitch rattle. And then as you went past that RPM, it would go away. But sometimes it was louder and more obnoxious than other times. And it was driving me crazy, and I couldn't figure it out. Well, I finally figured out what it was, and it was the air cleaner cover. It wasn't that it was loose or anything. It wasn't like vibrating around loose. This thing is just kind of like a bell. I mean, when you take it off and you tap it, it just had a pretty high pitch kind of twang to it. And also, there's no rubber gasket in between here and here, so that was metal on metal. But like I said, it's pretty tight and it fits in a groove. So it wasn't a matter of it moving around. I think it was just the shape of it and how thin of metal it is that it made that sound. So anyway, what I did, I have some Dynamat that I put on the floor, and I just lined, I'll show you real quick. I just lined the inside of the air cleaner with Dynamat, which got rid of that sound. Like when you tap on it, it makes it sound much more solid now. Anyway, the vibration's gone now. The rattling sound is gone now, completely. So you can see there's just a little bit of Dynamat in there. And you can hear when you tap on it, it's pretty solid now. So anyway, I fixed that. So yeah, like I said, all the little things that were kind of an issue that were preventing me from doing a driving video are kind of gradually getting taken care of. So I will very soon try to do a video where I take this on a nice long drive with the camera and get you guys some good footage of it driving and some good audio of it revving up. I will say I still enjoy the car at lower RPMs. I do go into the higher RPMs, especially if I want to go over, 60 miles an hour. In fourth gear, every 10,000 RPM is 10 miles per hour. So at 60 miles an hour, you're at 6,000 RPM. At 70 miles per hour, you're at 7,000 RPM. So you use that high rev to go highway speeds, basically. But using the higher revs to actually accelerate isn't very efficient. You gain speed much faster, I feel like, if you shift below 7,500 RPM, probably around 7,000 RPM. That's where you're going to get the most momentum gain from each gear. Beyond that, it makes a lot of noise, but it doesn't really give you a whole lot of gain. You're much better off with the gear change. Like I said, to get into the higher speeds, you need that high revving engine. And there have been some times when I was trying to climb a hill, and this thing, I will say, does not like hills very well, because of course it doesn't have any torque really. It's just all high. Its horsepower is at high RPM. So there have been times when you'll kind of need those higher RPMs, because I'll have to downshift from fourth to third just to keep going up the hill at a normal speed, the speed limit. And so I'll have to be at 7,500 RPM, just screaming along just to stay almost up with the speed of traffic as I'm going up the hill. So the higher RPMs, it makes sense why it needed it to function as a road car, but it's not necessarily, it sounds like a Ferrari, but it's clearly not the same experience as driving something that actually has that kind of horsepower. This thing, it's amazing for the small amount of horsepower that it has. I mean, a 600cc engine getting this much speed and this much horsepower is really, really incredible. But at the end of the day, it's still a 600cc engine. It's not fast by any means. It is a lot of fun. It is very enjoyable, and it does get a lot of attention, but definitely not fast. But okay, so that's the Honda. Real quick on the Land Cruiser. Like I said in my last video, I got the frame in here. I'm ready to get going on that engine. I still don't have the block back. The machine shop has said that they've got the bearings in, the cam bearings, and I believe they said the freeze plugs are back in, but they're waiting on the cam. They're having the cam reground, and so that hasn't been done yet. But also, I'm still waiting on the lifters. I ordered the lifters over a week ago. I think it was from Cruiser. Anyways, I ordered them over a week ago. They haven't shipped yet. The place I ordered them from was waiting on a couple of them. And so even if I had the engine, I couldn't put it together yet. I'm waiting on those lifters. So hopefully all that stuff's going to come together next week, and I'll be able to get going on that. But I do plan on, just as soon as I get in that engine, just jumping back into this thing and making some real progress. And also, since this Nissan engine is getting so close, I'm going to get that back into the Bushmaster, and then that thing can finally move. And once that moves, then we could start working on the body for the Land Cruiser. So the Land Cruiser is going to start making progress soon, and hopefully once it does, it's really going to start, hopefully I'm going to get a lot done. Once I get started on it, it's going to keep going pretty strong, I think, for a while. So that's pretty much it. That's enough rambling for this week, but thanks for watching, guys, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Okay, see you next time. Bye.